This may be one of the shortest interviews we've ever done on the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. It is definitely the most important. You're really going to enjoy, and I believe you're going to be changed by Kevin Hines' story. This is a good one.
He was a morbidly obese surgeon destined for an operating table and an early death. Now he's a rebel MD who is fabulously fit and fighting to make America healthy again. This is Stay Off My Operating Table with Dr. Philip Ovadia.
Welcome, everybody. It's the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast with Dr. Philip Ovadia. Today we have a guest I have really been looking forward to hearing from. Phil, set it up for us, and let's get this thing started.
Yeah, this one, I'm going to warn the audience, this one's going to be a little different. Our guest today, Kevin Hines, is someone that I kind of crossed paths with on the interwebs as it is. And he just has an amazing story that needs to be heard and needs to get out there. It is an amazing and inspiring story. But it's not really necessarily on our major topic of focus, but I think it is very important. And I think I know that the audience is really going to enjoy this one. So with that, let me turn it over to Kevin to give a kind of brief introduction about who he is, and then we can get into that amazing and inspiring story.
Sure, you bet. And thank you both for having me on. I really appreciate it. Glad to be here with you. Name is Kevin Hines, and I live with bipolar depression, the very same brain disease both of my biological parents, as I'm adopted, had before me when they called it manic depression in their day in the 70s and 80s. And due to bipolar depression, and what I term to be lethal emotional pain. At the age of 19, in the year 2000, some near 24 years ago, I leapt off the Golden Gate Bridge to try to end my life. One of less than 1% at the time to survive the fall. The fall is by and large 99.9% fatal. I am very lucky and very blessed to be alive. And I'll tell you this, a few things saved my life that day. I believe it was a miracle. I believe God saved my life. That's my pride. But I'll tell you this. I fell that day 220 feet, 25 stories, closing in on 75 miles an hour in 4 seconds. And in those 4 seconds, I prayed to God that I would live.
Wow.
A woman driving by in a red car saw me go over the rail at the moment of my attempt, called her friend in her car phone in the United States Coast Guard, who happened to be manning the waters of the bridge at that moment. The only reason the Coast Guard got to me in a timely manner in which they did. In the water before the Coast Guard boat arrived, I was drowning. I couldn't stay afloat. I kept going down. I go down one more time, and something very large and very slimy began circling beneath me, bumping me up. No longer was I wading or treading in the water or trying to fight to get to the surface. Now I'm lying atop the water on my back, being kept buoyant by this creature circling behind my elbows, knees, and shoulders, bumping me to the surface. And so I think it's a nice shark this whole time. It turns out to be a sea lion, and the people above looking down believed it to be keeping my body afloat until the Coast Guard boat arrived behind me. And many people went to the bridge patrol. Many people went to the Coast Guard office to recount that story. So we have testimony. But after that, one of the foremost back surgeons in the world, Dr. Jonathan Levin, who I just got reunited with a year ago, after 22 years of not seeing him, saved me the ability to stand, walk, and run. He performed a back surgery on me as I shattered 3 of my lower vertebrae and missed that day, severing my spinal cord by 2 millimeters. Dr. Levin and his team saved me the ability to do what I'm doing right now, which is stand here and talk to you. So I always say, Doc, that I get to be here. And getting to be here is both a privilege and a gift, no matter the pain you might be in. And I'm in a lot of pain. I have a lot of physical pain from what I did to myself 23 years ago, but I need no pity. I took those actions. I take responsibility for them. And today I live with some regular thoughts of suicide, but instead of acting on those thoughts, I do 2 things every time the ideations come. And this can be taught, and because it can be taught, it can be learned. So I'll tell your audience, every time these ideations of suicide come, I do 2 things. I find a mirror, anywhere. I look into that mirror and I say, my thoughts do not have to become my actions. They can simply be my thoughts. They don't have to own, rule, or define whatever I do next if they're dangerous to myself or others. The next thing I do is I turn to anyone willing to listen and I say 4 simple but very effective words. I need help now. Difference between me and people who attempt and die by suicide is that I don't stop turning to people and saying those words until someone's willing to help me. And I've stayed alive for 23 years doing this. And to anyone struggling with suicidal ideation, it does not have to be your end. It can be the beginning to asking for help, the beginning to finding hope, and the beginning of your beautiful future.
Wow.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to just follow up on that amazing story, but maybe kind of what you just talked on, because I think it may be hard for people who don't experience this to understand what suicidal ideation is like. So give us your perspective on that.
Sure. There are people all around the world that go through their entire life never having these kind of thoughts, but there are millions and millions who do. And we want to normalize the conversation. We want to conquer these thoughts, and we want to ask the questions to someone who's contemplating them. Are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made plans to take your life? And do you have the means? Those 3 questions tend to get a more honest answer than even the question, are you thinking of suicide? Because by nature, the word suicide has a taboo on it already. So by asking the direct and honest question, are you thinking of killing yourself? Have you made the plans to take your life? Do you have the means? You're opening the door to a person sharing their pain. And I always say a pain shared is a pain halved. To answer your question, though, to those who can't quite understand what a suicidal ideation can come from, it comes from the deepest and darkest pains we've ever experienced and traumas. And anybody can go through it, of any age, of any background. And people who can't comprehend it, think of it like this. You have this internal voice, this internal narrative that's telling you you're worthless, you have no value, and that you don't belong here. And that narrative becomes a loop in your mind. It becomes a perseverating loop in your mind. And you start to believe the words that your distorted reality is saying. When you think to yourself, I'm a burden, you're wrong. You're not. And that feeling of burdensomeness to others is what can often lead to suicidal crisis. I wish people who had that perception of self-burdensomeness could realize their true value, how worthy they are of love, and how much they actually do matter and how important they are. I know a lot of people that struggle with self-love, but they struggle with self-love because they've never believed they can be loved by anybody else. And when you don't believe you can be loved, you lack all self-care for yourself, and you go down that rabbit hole into suicidal crisis and ideation. So I think that helping people understand who don't have the ideation, that just because someone you love doesn't make them a bad person, doesn't make what they're thinking wrong. In fact, it's so commonplace around the world. What you must do is embrace them. Listen to understand, not to respond, and be there in the moment. You don't always have to have a solution to their problem. You don't always have to have an answer or advice. Sometimes you can just physically be in attendance and say, I got you. You don't have to do this. It's not the answer, and you're safe with me. And that's all people need sometimes, to get past that moment, to get to a brighter day.
How did you get from being picked up by the Coast Guard just a few minutes after deciding to end your own life to today, to this particular message? Talk through that transformation.
Sure.
Obviously, jumping off a bridge was a pretty transformative moment. But
yeah, and surviving, because most people don't. Yeah. But it was in the psych ward after my physical recovery, or the start of my physical recovery, because I went from a wheelchair to a walker and a back brace to a back brace and a cane, then right into my first psych ward. It was in that psych ward that I met a man named Brother George Cherry. He was a Franciscan friar of the Catholic faith. I'm Catholic. And he comes into my room one day, and this is a guy who wore the black robe and the white robe and the brown sandals and stark white hair. He looks like St. Francis, but no birds. And this is a man who was a chaplain in the hospital for about 30 years. And he would always read the chart so he knew what he was getting into when he walked into a room. But on this day, he just walked right in without reading the chart. He felt compelled to just walk right in. He walks in and he looks at me. And here I am putting on my back brace for the first time that I can put it on myself, actually. And my cane is to my right side on the bed. And I'm putting on my back brace, I'm struggling. And he goes, "Hey, kid, what are you in for?" And I said, "Brother, I jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge." And he goes, "Yeah, and I'm the Pope." He didn't. Yeah, he thought I was delusional. And I said, "No, brother, that's what happened. That's why the back brace, that's why the cane." And he goes, "Oh, so sorry. I feel so silly. Let's pray." And he comes by my side, he sits down next to me, and he says prayers I'm very familiar with, and I repeat them with him. And he turns to me and he says, "Kid, when you get better, you want to talk about this." And I looked at him and I said, "About what? To who?" I didn't understand. He said, "You'll see." Every single day of my month-long stay there, Brother George Cherry would come into my room, he would pray with me, and he would say, "Kid, when you get better, you want to talk about this." And every day I would ignore him. On the final day of my stay, Brother George Cherry comes in, and my father's helping me hobble out of the hospital with my back brace and my cane in a lot of pain. And he says, "Kevin," as I'm walking out the door, he says, "Kevin, I expect you'll talk about this." And I was like, "See ya." And I get out of the hospital. And my father, very shortly thereafter, takes me to church, the same church I grew up in, school I went to next door. And I'm in the service, and I felt like the priest was talking directly to me. It's just entirely possible my dad was on his board, so he could have just say this. The priest comes out after the service, and he says, "Kevin, so glad you came to church today. How are you feeling?" I'm like, "Ah." And he goes, "Kevin, we're so glad you're here. We're so glad you're alive. How would you like to come and talk to our 7th and 8th grade class about your experience this Good Friday?" I was like, "Oh, you gotta be kidding me." I was like, "Father, I don't have a speech and I wouldn't know what to say." And my dad shoves me forward and goes, "You'll do it." I was like, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "You'll do it. We need closure." I'm like, "You need closure, old man. I need to go and lay down." But I didn't say that. He's 6'1" and I'm not. I go home, and Good Friday rolls around, and I write a speech till 3 a.m. on Good Friday. So it wasn't mentally healthy. But it was 17 pages to read aloud. I timed it that morning. And it was 17 pages, 45 minutes. And my dad kind of edited it a little bit. And I go on Good Friday in front of 120 7th and 8th grade kids sitting cross-legged on the floor in the same Catholic uniform I used to wear. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Who is this going to help? What a waste of time. I start rolling off the speech. Now here I am with my back brace on, holding my cane while leaning my back brace up against the lip of the table behind me so I can stand barely. And I'm in a lot of pain. And I'm dropping page by page to the floor with my thumb while reading it from the page, while crying aloud, while really emotional and like really raw and shaky. And I dropped the last page to the floor. And my first thought was like, what am I doing here? And then 8 hands go up. I was like, did I just make an impact? And I call him the first kid in the back, and he asks the most inappropriate question. And the nun goes out, "Don't answer that." I wasn't going to. But then 7 more intuitive, empowering, important, and moving questions. And I was like, wow, that did, okay, whatever. So I go home and I stop thinking of it. And I'm thinking, well, I'm never going to do that again. I get a call 2 weeks later from Father Michael Harriman. He calls me, he goes, "Kevin, would you come to the rectory? I've got something for you." So I huck up 2 miles in my back brace and my cane, sweating through my back brace, having an asthma attack. I get to the rectory. I walk into his office, He sits me down. I take my inhaler because I'm having an asthma attack. And he goes, Kevin, here, this is for you. And he hands me a manila envelope, and I open it. And inside it was a Sacred Heart drawing, of a beautiful pencil-colored drawing of the Sacred Heart of Jesus by one of the kids. It was beautiful, really beautiful. I still have it. I opened that, and there's 120 letters from 120 kids. Now, don't make a mistake. They were mandated to write the letters. A bunch of 7th and 8th grade kids didn't all get together and go, let's all write to the suicidal guy simultaneously. But because they were minors under the age of 18, counselors and parents, listen up. Because they were minors under the age of 18, and they were not given any parameters on what they could write, they were told to write me to their heart's content. And 6 of them wrote of their active suicidal crisis. Because the letters were screened by the parents and teachers, they were given the care they were needed, and they're alive today, and 2 of them are therapists.
Wow.
And so that was one speech in 1 year. And that's all I did. The same school next year. And then I started going around to schools and organizations and hospitals and all around the city of San Francisco and the greater Bay Area, and giving a business card that I really printed off my computer and cut myself out of, and telling people, I want to speak for you. And it became what it is today, 250 to 300 presentations a year, keynotes around the world. And I'm so blessed and so lucky that I get to exist, that I get to do this work, and that I get to stand here and talk to both of you.
Wow. Tell us about the lemons.
Oh, the lemons. This is a foundation my friend created. Tay and Taylor Lautner. Taylor, he was the werewolf in the Twilight films. Tay and Taylor Lautner are husband and wife that are incredible, and have the Lemons Foundation for mental health. And it's Lemons by Tay on Instagram. And they give free mental health care to people in need across Los Angeles and beyond. And they're doing some great work in mental health. And they had me on their podcast, and they gifted me the sweatshirt. So I wear it so often, I didn't realize I had it on.
I forgot you had it on. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes. All right. Good deal.
What this is going to be, I don't know. I guess this is a challenging question to answer, but if you could go back, would you do it again? Knowing what happened since? Yeah,
it's not a challenging question to answer. I wouldn't change a thing. What I would say to everyone else thinking about it is, don't take the step. Your life is too valuable. You matter too much. Suicide and suicide attempts are not the answer. They're the problem. Suicidal ideations are the greatest liars we know. We don't have to listen to them. Suicide does not take the pain away. It makes it virtually impossible for things to ever get better. So that being said, the name of my podcast is Hindsights. In hindsight, I wouldn't change anything, because it's led me here to you, and hopefully this podcast changes someone's life. That's the goal, right? Every action we take, everything we do, it has a ripple effect in our lives. Did it devastate my family? Absolutely. Did it destroy some friendships? Yes. But here I am today, alive and well and thriving, trying to help other people heal. And that's a gift. And I wouldn't wish it on anyone else. And I hope that you are able to recognize that and understand that if you're going through these kinds of thoughts in this moment right now, take a breather. Just stop. Take a breath. Do in 4 through your nose, hold for 4 seconds, release pursed lips like a whistle but no sound for 8 seconds. Do that 30 more times. 30 resonance deep breaths. Sit with yourself in a calm place. Bring your brain, your mind, and your body to a cool. And recognize that there are so many other options besides attempting to take your life or dying by suicide. There are so many pathways to healing and to recovery from whatever you're dealing with. And that there are people who genuinely care about you and want you here. And if maybe you don't have that kind of family that's got your back, maybe you don't have that kind of support network that you need so desperately, you have an opportunity to become your best advocate. You have an opportunity to change the way you see the world. Don't let your pain defeat you. No, let it build you brick by brick from the ground up until you're stronger than ever. I have regular thoughts of suicide. I've never attempted again after the Golden Gate Bridge. You don't have to start. You can stop it right now and stay right here and be here tomorrow and every day after that.
How did you learn these skills?
Time, effort, energy, and hard work. Nothing good ever came without it. My father taught me that. I just was too stubborn to listen until it was nearly too late. I'll never forget my father coming into my hospital room, and I could hear his feet clacking down the hallway, clickety clacking. And he comes into my room. This is a man who played years of semi-pro hockey as the goalie with no mask. Okay, he's a tough SOB.
Oh my God.
He comes in the room, and he had never cried a day in my life in 19 years up until that point. And waterfalls flew from his eyes. And he said, Kevin, I'm sorry. Guilt. And I said, no, Dad, I'm sorry. And here I am in a bracing structure. I can't even move. And he puts his hand on my forehead and he says words I'll never forget. Kevin, you're going to be okay. I promise. They didn't know if I'd live through the night.
Oh.
But he and his words kept me here. And I fought. It was a hard road. But here we are.
You know, that brief little story about your dad reminds me of the underappreciated power of just our words. I don't want to lead the witness, but I'd love for you to talk more about the words that have made a difference in your.
Let's talk about that. Let's start with the words that make a difference in a bad and a good way. Words have the power to do one of two things: damage and destroy, or help and heal. What will your words toward those you love do tomorrow and for the rest of your life? And this is very important. Those words my dad said kept me here. My mom came into the hospital, and she is the most optimistic woman on the face of the planet, Debbie Hines. And she comes in, and she just says, I guess God wanted you to win that Oscar. And I had done high school and college theater, and I was like, it was high school and college theater. I don't think that's going to happen, but thanks. But her words were still inspiring in me. And now I make documentary films, so who knows? Maybe it could happen someday. Who knows? Who knows? But those words made a difference. And then my brother came in. He was 13 at the time. And he said, how could you do this to us? We love you. I hate you. And he walked out. He has no recollection of this, but I have witnesses. He was in so much pain because I didn't know that my brother actually looked up to me. And I shattered his vision of me. I destroyed it in one fell swoop, literally. And so our words and our actions matter. And I want to change the trajectory of this conversation just a bit, because all around the world, wherever I travel to grade schools and high schools and middle schools, this is the most common theme I hear. Number one, I'm being bullied all day, every day in school. When I go home, I'm being bullied online. And it's destroying me. And people are saying to me online and otherwise, you should just go kill yourself. Let's stop right there. Your words, young individuals, that you are sharing with the people, your peers, and the fact that you're telling them quite callously to just take their lives. They have mothers and fathers, sisters and brothers, family and friends that need them, and they are dying because of your words. And that's appalling, it's disgusting, and it's downright evil. Stop it. Stop it. You have the power to stop it. Hurt people. All right? I get why you're hurting someone else, because you've been hurt. You don't have to perpetuate the same situation you're going through. You can change the narrative and change the trajectory of your ethos, your life, and give kindness to someone else so they can go have a good life. You don't have to hurt other people just because you've been hurt. You can break that cycle right now. Anybody listening that's ever done that, anybody who's ever been a bully, knock it off. What are you doing? You're destroying lives, and it's not worth it. It's not. When I was in grade school, I'm part black. When I was in grade school, the 8th graders took me as a 4th grader and shoved me in a garbage can face first and told me that's what I was because of my race. How is that okay? How is that allowed? There was a guy, I'll never forget, his name was Nick, I won't say his last name. He held my head down, and he would yell, swing, little N-word, swing. And so here I am with my head held by this 8th grader in 4th grade, swinging to try to get him away from me like this. And he just would hold me there during the entirety of recess. And I wonder where he is today. But you know what? I don't wish him ill. I wish him healing. I hope he has found peace in his life, because I know for a fact that his father beat him. So I know why people do these things, but I also know they can stop and they can break the cycle.
What, if anything, have you learned about the physiology of bipolar, of these mental dysfunctions, and we'll take it from there.
One of the biggest things that I don't think is highlighted enough is the gut to brain health connection. Your gut microbiome houses and creates all your body's serotonin and dopamine, affecting your mental well-being. If you're feeding your body only poison processed foods, you're damaging your brain's functionality at the cellular level. In my infancy, before I was adopted, my birth parents fed me Kool-Aid, Coca-Cola, and sour milk.
Good
from
God.
Ravaging my gut, destroying my brain. I was by definition mentally ill from the very beginning of my life. And if more people could understand that what we put into our bodies nurtures our mind, we would be a lot better off society. We would be a lot more well-adjusted, rounded, safe, and healthy. And I don't mean healthy from a physical standpoint, having the 6-pack abs. That's not what healthy is. I'm talking about healthy as a society where we have food deserts all across this country where people can only get those processed foods. They don't even have the opportunity to get food that nourishes their brain. And thus the violence levels in those cities, in those areas, is skyrocketing off the charts. And it has a great deal to do with the level of poison in their bodies that they're feeding their brains.
Yeah,
that's pretty profound there.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've had 2 psychiatrists on this program, Dr. Christopher Palmer and Dr. Georgia Eade, both of who have come to realize this interrelationship between what we eat and our mental health. So very encouraging to hear you say that. And as much as my audience is probably going to think, oh, Dr. Ovadia knew that you would be saying that, I didn't know that was part of your messaging, but I'm very, very encouraged to hear that. At what point in your life did you recognize that? Did you realize that?
It was in a situation that was very dire for me, actually. I developed secondary burns from head to toe without a fire. One of my medications, along with the foods I was eating, combined to poison my organs. And I was on the tipping point of Stevens-Johnson syndrome.
What is that?
If you get Stevens-Johnson syndrome, which is very rare, a very small percentage of people who take medications get it. It can be caused by any medication. If you get Stevens-Johnson syndrome, people who get it most severely, their insides boil outside of them and they expire. They die.
God.
And I got to the point where bloody blisters were across my whole body literally from head to toe. And the doctor said, if you don't get off all medications right now, you're going to die. And I was like, what do you mean? I have bipolar depression. I have asthma. I have allergies. If I get off these meds, I could die from an asthma attack. So I was panicking. But an interesting thing happened. They took me off all psych meds, all asthma meds, and all allergy meds. My asthma went away. But here I was going through the most physical pain I've ever experienced in my life. It felt like knives and needles were coming from my bones to my skin everywhere. So they had to get me off these meds. So they got me off meds, and they were trying to determine by reintroducing med by med which medication was causing the problem. They determined which one it was. I was able to get back on psych meds to help me with my brain and mental health and some asthma meds. But it was a very scary time. And what the doctors said was you need to radically shift your diet and the things you eat because you're eating a great deal of inflammatory foods, which are a big causative factor to these problems that you're having, along with the meds connecting to them and having some kind of reaction. And so what I ended up doing was I started eating mostly anti-inflammatory foods, most meals, most days.
I'm sorry, too fast. Mostly what?
Mostly anti-inflammatory meals.
Oh, okay.
Most meals, most days.
Okay.
I didn't do it every meal. I didn't do it every day, but I did it most meals, most days. And I saw a dramatic improvement in my skin, in my physical and mental health, in my brain health, and my well-being. And it's allowed me to be on an even keel now for a very long time. And so I follow these routines, I practice them, I educate myself as to my diagnosis, I exercise every day, I eat anti-inflammatory meals, most meals, most days. I educate myself, I go to therapy. I don't just use talk therapy. I use talk therapy, blue wave light box therapy, art therapy, music therapy. I am engulfed in these treatment modalities because I know that if I don't follow my routine, I'm right back in the psych ward. And so these are the things I have to do. And that's what I mean by putting in the hard work, because everyone wants their betterment right now. They want that one pill or that one exercise or that one tool that's going to solve all their problems. This isn't the Uberification of life. If you want to be well from a severe diagnosed brain illness, you have to do the work. You have to put in the time, effort, and energy, or else it's not going to happen. Now, I understand it's really hard for people who are in the thick of it to do. But once you have a modicum of wellness, you need to fight for your betterment and you need to do everything you can to stay stable.
Did you have any, I'm certain just because I know human beings, that it hasn't been a continuously upward trajectory for you since then. And the reason I ask this, I had a physical situation, not a mental situation, but that was almost killed me. And once I recovered from that, I was gung-ho and excited and went way too far, way too fast. And I reverted and kind of had to start all over again.
Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about that for people who are facing that kind of thing. Does that
Sure.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at my life's path in the last, I would say from 2000 to 2019, so 19 years, 10 psych ward stays for suicidal crisis in those 19 years.
Wow.
3 of them were involuntary, forced in against my will. The next 7, I walked into those wards and said, I need to be here or I won't be here. I took responsibility for my brain pain. I told the doctors what I needed. I was even the one letting them know what medications worked, what medications didn't. I was all in on developing my brain being. And they respected because they saw a person that was part of me. Pardon me.
I ask you about the trajectory and probably the ups and downs.
Yeah. So here I am. I'd get on this routine of wellness. I'd stop my routine, right back into a cycle. And then refresh, replay, repeat. And so that was kind of the deal until 2019, where I made the ultimate commitment to myself, my family, my faith, that I'm never going to let go of the routine again, that I'm going to stick with it because every time I utilize it, I get to a generally safe place. I'm able to function at a high level, and I'm able to best give back to my communities. And that's where we are today. I still struggle with the brain pain, but I've really got the mechanism to betterment under control. And that's really, I think, what's been incredible is that I go around and teach people how to build that mechanism, how to devise a mental health emergency plan that you follow innately, regularly, routinely, and almost involuntarily.
So you mentioned that you do keynote addresses and give speeches frequently. Talk about some of the other projects that you have going on to help get this message out to the people that need to hear it.
Sure. One of the biggest things we're doing right now is raising a fund for the film The Net, about the harrowing, near century-long effort to end death at the Golden Gate Bridge, the 7 fights that failed since 1937, which is when the first fight from the bridge patrol of that era fought to raise the rail. It failed. 6 fights after that failed. The current effort, led by my father, Patrick Kevin Hines, myself, and many other people who fought for tirelessly, really, so many people, hard to name them all, fought to end death at the Golden Gate Bridge. The net has been in place as of January 1 of this year, and it may not be 100% successful, but very few people are ever again going to die off the Golden Gate Bridge, where one person was dying there every 7 to 10 days or less.
Oh my God.
And so it was the most frequented spot for suicide in the world, and now it is a beacon of hope. And it is a proud representation of reduction of access to lethal means for suicide prevention right around the world. And we're making the definitive documentary about that story.
Yeah, that's an amazing statistic, by the way. I mean, I guess I kind of had a sense that it was somewhat common for people to choose this as their location for committing suicide, but I had no idea it was that magnitude.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is. It was terrible. And we fought, my family and I fought for the better part of 23 years to stop that, alongside the Bridge Rail Foundation, which I have to give credit to, Paul Muller and Dave Hall, my father, Patrick, the Gamboa family, Mark and Dana Whitmer. Mark, may rest in peace, didn't get to see this happen, but their son died off the Golden Gate Bridge. And the people that were involved in making this effort real, making the net real, never gave up, never gave in, against all odds, kept their belief in the idea that someday they would get this net up on the Golden Gate and stop suicides there.
I'm guessing that your story alone has saved hundreds of lives, and going forward, if it's one every 7 days, is that what you said?
1 every 7 to 10 days was dying at the Golden Gate.
That's 50 people a year.
I'm happy to tell you both. In the 23 years I've been doing this work, my videos online that I've done with other groups or myself have amassed, I think now a little over 3 billion views. And the comments alone from those videos and the comments that I receive on my social medias and the letters I receive and all that, emails, hundreds of thousands of people have said this story saved their life in 23 years.
What an extraordinary story.
I don't claim to own that. I don't believe I save lives. I think that I'm a conduit. I give a message, people go home, they do the work, they're saving and changing their own lives. Because they're the ones that are going to their families and saying, hey, I need help now. They're the ones that are going to their doctors and saying, hey, I'm in a bad place. They're the ones who are taking action to stay right here. So they're doing it themselves.
I want to be cognizant of your time limitations. One more time, for those who are listening and they desperately need this message right now, repeat those 2 or 3 things.
Sure.
That you said. And we're going to...
You desperately need this message. You're in dire straits. You're in need of some hope. Find a mirror, anywhere. Look into that mirror and say, my thoughts do not have to become my actions. They can simply be my thoughts. They don't have to own, rule, or define what I do next, if they're dangerous to myself or dangerous to others. The second thing you must do is turn to anyone willing to listen and say 4 simple but very effective words. I need help now. And don't stop saying I need help now to people until one person is willing to empathize with your pain, because the pain shared is a pain halved. So you don't have to go it alone. You're here for a reason. It's not to die by your hands. Do you know we have a 1 in 400 trillionth of a chance to be birthed into this world? You had a 1 in 400 trillionth of a chance to simply exist. That means you're never meant to die by your hands. It's not your purpose. Your purpose is to thrive, and you can find a way.
There's no better way to end it than with that right there. All right. It looks to me like the best way to find out more, Kevin, is at your website, kevinhinesstory.com.
kevinhinesstory.com, and you can go to @KevinHinesStory across all socials and meet me there. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear your stories, love to hear your journeys, and I'm just glad to be anywhere.
We're grateful you were here. Phil, wrap it up for us,
thank you so much for joining us, for giving your important story. And as Jack said, we're certainly grateful you're here, as are many others. And I hope this helps people out there who are struggling to recognize how important each one of them are to someone.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being with us. We'd love to hear from you. For Dr. Philip Ovadia and Kevin Hines, this is the Stay Off My Operating Table podcast. We'll talk to you guys next time.
Chances are you wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you didn't need to change your life and get healthier. So take action right now. Book a call with Dr. Ovadia's team. One small step in the right direction is all it takes to get started. Contact us at ifixhearts.com/talk. That's ifixhearts.com/talk. linkedin.com/talk.